Teachers, don't let anything or anybody bring you down. We are on the right path.
I believe teachers are the most amazing people in the world, the people who I respect the most.
Say this is a way we can make our classes much more enjoyable for our students and also achieve our objectives.
So bringing the world into the classroom, bring diversity, bring other cultures, bring other places, other real people.
Good afternoon. Sorry, I think there was a little connection problem, but here we are. Welcome back to everybody, to all the teachers, to our third and final block of the TDC 2022 organized by SBS Librería Internacional. On behalf of SBS Librería Internacional, we would like to thank you for your virtual attendance at this event. This afternoon, we'll have two very interesting conferences to close with. Remember that you can write your questions in the chat box and they will be answered at the end of each presentation. We also remind you that to obtain the certificates, you must be registered, but you only need to be registered once. If you already registered, that is fine. All the registered participants will receive an email with a link at the end of the event so that they can register their information for the certificate. The certificate will be awarded to participants who attend 70% of the TDC conferences, that is to say, at least 5 conferences. If you have not yet registered, please do it now. Start the organizers, SBS Librería Internacional. Let's go, Team SBS.
En SBS, Librería Internacional, estamos comprometidos con la educación y la difusión de la cultura a través de materiales físicos y digitales. Somos una de las cadenas más grandes de Sudamérica, orientada a producir y distribuir libros de idiomas, académicos y de interés general, así como bibliografía clásica e imprescindible. Hemos consolidado nuestra presencia en Perú con librerías ubicadas estratégicamente en los departamentos de Lima, Cusco, Arequipa, Trujillo, Piura, Chiclayo, Iquitos y Huancayo. Además de una librería online, donde presentamos una gran variedad de títulos que podrás recibir desde la comodidad de tu hogar, gracias a nuestro servicio de delivery a nivel nacional. SBS Librería Internacional. Soluciones para quien enseña y para quien aprende.
Thank you. Okay. So let's start this afternoon session by giving a warm welcome to Cambridge University Press. In Cambridge, we believe that language is at the heart of being human, and English can unlock a lifetime of experiences. Together with teachers and our partners, we're here to engage and inspire millions of people throughout their entire learning journey. We help people learn English and prove their skills to the world. Now let's learn a little bit more about Cambridge University Press by watching this short video. Let's go, Team SBS.
Grow. Grew. Grown. When you grow up, what will you be when you grow up? She grows, she learns, she improves. Her interest is growing. She grows in she will prove herself. She grows in curiosity. She is curious.
Curiosity.
Her passion is growing stronger. She grows in confidence. She grows in confidence. I will grow in confidence, prove myself, and reach my full potential. This is where ambition grows, where potential grows, and where your future grows. Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to learn about the sky at night. Cambridge is where your world grows.
Excellent. Now I want to welcome our first speaker of this University of Buenos Aires, a postgraduate diploma in education and new technologies from Facultad Latinoamericana de Ciencias Sociales, and a diploma of neuroscience for educators from the Asociación Educar and the National University of Buenos Aires. He has been working as a teacher, school coordinator, teacher trainer, and presenter since 1993. He has been delivering seminars and workshops all over Argentina, South, Central, and North America, China, Spain, and Singapore as a freelancer for Oxford University Press and Trinity College London. He is a former vice president of APIVA, the Buenos Aires English Teachers Association, and former vice president of FAAPI, the Argentine Federation of English Teacher Associations. Welcome to TDC.
Hello, and thank you for that warm welcome. I'm afraid, though, that was the biodata for Gustavo Gonzalez. I would like to claim all of those credits for myself, but it wouldn't be accurate. No big deal, no problem. So, what are we going to be talking about today? We're going to be talking about assessment as a GPS for learning. And we're going to be talking about that in a very specific context, or in a very particular context, which is the context where we are today. We have just had a major disruption in the way we teach and learn, in the way we live, in the way we exist in the world. And that has brought many things now that we have been back in our classrooms for a few months. I'm sure you've come across many things which are new, which are different, which are challenging, which are not the way you remember they were back in the end of 2019 or back at the beginning of 2020, if you were lucky enough to be able to teach at all in that time. However, what can we do to get back on track? And basically, what can we do to know where we are? Because one thing that I get from many people that I talk to, many teachers, many students, many people in education is, we don't know, it's hard to know where my learners are, what they missed, what they lost, what they gained, what things happened, because all of our usual ways of knowing where we are, of knowing what we know, of knowing what is going on with our learners really, have flown out the window. Everything is changed, everything is different. And this is why this is a great moment to return to some notions about assessment, and some notions about what assessment means and how it can work as the thing that we need at this moment. To do that, I would like to share my screen with you, and I would like to start by asking you a couple questions. So in the chat box, I would like you to complete these sentences. Let's begin with one. This is a classic fill in the blanks. So learning is like 5 words or less. If you can do it in 2 words, ideal. So learning is like what to you? Let's see what comes through in the comments. So learning can be like many things. We all feel differently about it. Learning can be like many things, even to us. But what is it like to you? What do you feel like learning is to you today? Learning is like life, beautiful. Learning is like riding a bike. I love the idea of riding a bike, because riding a bike is this thing that you never really forget. And now we're back, and it's like, yeah, we're back where we know the place from the beginning. Milton says, learning is like a journey. Learning is like traveling to the future. That's a beautiful one, Cecilia, a really beautiful one. Teaching is definitely like shaping the future. Learning is opening your mind. Learning is like fresh water. Learning is like sailing. Learning is food for our brains. Learning is a roller coaster. Well, yeah, teaching definitely is a roller coaster. I'm sure learning feels like that too. Like flying away, beautiful one. A challenging journey, exploring new things, like receiving light. How beautiful is that? Learning is the best, isn't it, Carlos? Like opening the heart, another beautiful one. Like a rainbow with different stages, like music, like a surprise. Yes, isn't that so? Learning is like a whole new world every day. Learning is a bunch of opportunities to succeed, opportunities for success. That's another beautiful one. like going into an adventure. We have journeys, we have adventures, a trip, traveling around the world, like a new adventure every day, like life. So pause that, because I have a second question for you, which is learning. What is learning like? That was my question number one. Assessment is like. So what is assessment like for you? If you had to compare assessment to one thing, what would that be? What is assessment, and how is assessment different from learning in the way we feel about it and the way you feel about it? Well, one last one for learning from Roxana. Learning is like being moved by a hurricane. Okay. Hurricanes today, thinking of hurricanes in this environment in this week is a bit of a challenge, or is a bit, maybe not the best, but anyway. So what about assessment? I see the first things coming through. Assessment is like leading others. That's an interesting one. Estimation. Okay. Any other ideas for what assessment is to you? Like purifying dark waters. Okay, that's an interesting one. It really is. Learning is like building, flying as a bee, ways of introducing knowledge, redoing what we learn, says Carmen. Assessment, this idea of redoing, recapturing the learning, appreciating a student's progress, is challenge for curiosity. Assessment is like traveling too. Okay. Assessment support, like supporting deeper thinking, useful sincerity. Absolutely. Hopefully, assessment brings an element of honesty and of clarity and of like shedding light into things. Assessment is like checking progress, like practicing. The idea of assessment as judgment, and the idea of assessment as knowing or estimating, and the idea of assessment as practice, as one opportunity to bring back the things that we know, the things that we've been practicing and learning and doing, is a really rich sort of juxtaposition of ideas, like a guide to guide your steps to the final goal, to support deeper thinking, like looking back at the way. Okay, looking back, looking forward, we'll be talking about that a lot, like finding the horizon. I see that too. So the interesting thing is that when we talk about what learning is like to us, when we talk about what assessment is like to us, we need to be talking about the two of them at the same time. And this is very much the message, sort of the core message. If you leave today's session with one idea, that idea should be that learning and assessment really work like one thing, like aspects into one thing. So we are going to be using a metaphor which is similar to what Fernando says. I see a very interesting final comment, which is that assessment is measuring where the learners are in their journey before they arrive at their destination. We're definitely going to be sticking to that, Fernando. Thank you very much for that, because we are going to be using the idea of, or the metaphor that we're going to be exploring today. We could be exploring any of the ones you said, and there are many interesting metaphors that sort of shed light into different aspects, really, of what learning and assessment are and how they work. However, today we're going to be focusing on learning and assessment as a journey, and what thinking of learning and assessment as a journey bring to us. Thinking of that, this is a quote from one of my favorite authors, Ursula Le Guin, a Canadian science fiction writer. I couldn't recommend her strongly enough if you don't know her. And she said, "It is good to have an end to journey toward, but it is the journey that matters in the end. Not necessarily the goal, the place where you're going, but what happens along the way." Or in the words of Aerosmith, in a song that you've probably heard on the radio a million times, life's a journey, not a destination. It is not necessarily about where we're going, when we get there, etc., but life is about the ride. And learning is very much about that. We very often in our learning journeys think or set out to get to one destination, and the learning happens when we realize that we're going in a different direction, or that we want to be going in a different direction. That the things that we pick up, that we learn, that we acquire, the ways in which we change along the way, mean that we change. I started learning English because my parents sent me to class and I didn't really have a choice. So my goal there was just to do the things that I needed to do to pass a course. I didn't know that it was a journey that was going to take me through my life, that it was going to give me most of the things I have today. It gave me a career, it gave me a passion, it gave me, my wife is an English teacher, we probably wouldn't be together if we didn't share that, among other things. We definitely wouldn't have met if we hadn't both been teachers, teaching in the same institution. So many things came from that. And I discovered that the journey never really ends for me. I don't want this journey to end. I'm sure that none of us want our learning journeys to ever stop. That's why we became teachers. That's why we do what we do. That's why we love what we do. So, but the role of assessment there then, of assessment for learning, which is an idea that we're going to define and explore today, is of how in that journey, assessment can be a GPS. Assessment can be a tool to do many things. Because actually, when we talk about a GPS, we think of a GPS as something that tells us where we are. If you think about the ones on our mobile phones, the ones in our cars, the ones that we use to navigate the world. But actually, a good GPS or assessment does three things. GPS does three things, and assessment does those three things. Though three classic functions, not the only functions of assessment, but the three classic ones, and the ones that we go back to most often in the classroom. So a basic GPS, a basic use of the GPS is the one you're looking at here, which is basically telling me, you are here. This is where you are. I turn on my phone, I look at my Maps app on the phone, and it tells me where I am in the world, in this place. Here you can see the location of my house here in Buenos Aires, Argentina. And that in the classroom, or that in assessment, is the diagnostic function of assessment. Diagnostic assessment tells me where I am. So when we do something like a placement test, or when we use assessment in a diagnostic way, we are using it to know what our students know, what our students don't know. We receive a group of students that come from different groups, that come from different learning trajectories at the beginning of the year. And we do we do activities to basically know which are the things that they know really well, the skills that they have, their strengths, the areas where they will need a bit more help, how much they remember from English, what kind of things they have more of a facility to do. And that is basically about knowing where you are. But a good GPS does two things, can give me two things. Because in this one, I have pointed out where I am, so you are here, but then I have said that I would like to be here. So I want to go to a place. For this example, you are looking at where my house is, my home, where I am, and I would like to be at the address of the Cambridge office in Buenos Aires. So, and it tells me how far the two places are. It gives me a sense of the distance. It gives me a sense of the distance between these 2 points, and in assessment, that will be the function of summative assessment. Because summative assessment tells me where I am in relation to my learning objectives. So summative assessment, like the test that we do at the end of the year, the test that we do at the end of a course. Then we have a learning objective, which is our curriculum, where we would like to be, where we need to be, where what we set as the goal. And then we use a test, and that test is going to tell me if I am at that level, if I am over that level a little or a lot, if I am below that level a little or a lot. And I use that information to do many things. We often use that information to make certain decisions. Summative assessment is always connected with making decisions, but summative assessment is a classic example of that. We use it to decide if you can pass a course or not. We use it to decide if you're going to be admitted to something or not. We can use it for many things, but always in the context of some kind of objective, some kind of idea or a goal or a reference point, a place where we would like to be. And we use assessment to tell us where we are in relation to that. If we don't have a goal, well, we cannot really assess. I mean, imagine that we have a test, but we don't really know what we don't really have a definition of what our learners should know, what they should be capable of doing. We don't have some kind of framework to tell us what is good, what is bad, what is very good, what is very bad. Then we cannot really do anything. Often when we have difficulty assessing something, when we really struggle to come up with an assessment strategy that will work, or when we see something that really doesn't work, it comes from either a mismatch between what we have in the curriculum and what we have in the assessment strategy, or because our curriculum, because our goals, where we would like to be, is not clear enough. Without those definitions, we can't really go anywhere. We cannot really decide anything. In the words of Alice, I mean, there is this fantastic passage in Alice in Wonderland when Alice says, so they were going to a place and they say, are we far? Are we going in the right direction? And say, where would you like to go? I don't know where I am. I don't know where I would like to go. And then the other character says, well, if you don't know where you're going, every road is a good road and every road is a bad road. There isn't a good path. There isn't a bad path. It's like you're not going anywhere. There isn't a right path. There isn't even a path, properly speaking. And then comes the final one, because with a GPS on our phones, we actually do more than these two things. It is not just about, I am here, I would like to go there, and this is the distance. Because a good GPS is going to tell you, is going to give you something else. It's going to tell me that I am here, I would like to be here, this is how far I am. But it also gives me routes. It gives me alternative routes, and it shows me which is the best one. So it tells me that this is how you get to your destination. And that is formative assessment, or that is assessment for learning. Because formative assessment, assessment for learning, tells me where I am in relation to my learning objectives and tells me what I need to do to reach my objectives. It is not just about, I am here, I would like to be here, this is a long way, or I am doing great. It tells me, well, these are your strengths, these are your weaknesses, these are the things you do. And then, as a teacher, you can use that information to decide how to get to that destination. What are the next steps? In the words of John Hattie, this is what he calls not just feedback, not just information, not just a comment on the things that you did, but feed forward. How are you going to get to your destination based on what we did just now? So when we give our learners feedback on their writing, for instance, this is not just giving them feedback or giving them comments about the things that they did well and the things that they didn't do well. We have to give them something that is going to help them do it better the next time. We have to give them something that is going to help them understand what is good, what is not so good, and how to improve it. Without that, we are not really exploiting the capabilities of assessment. Assessment for learning, we are going to refer to the Assessment Reform Group very often today, because the Assessment Reform Group was a group of mostly English, but let's call them UK, because not all of them were English, researchers in the area of education and assessment. They started working together in the late 90s, and they produced a series of very influential reports in which basically they said that formative assessment is the most impactful intervention that a teacher can do in the learning process. And they defined assessment for learning as the following: the process of seeking and interpreting evidence for use by learners and their teachers in their learning, where they need to go, and how best to get there. So, evidence that can be used by learners and their teachers to know where they are, to know where they need to go, and to know how to get there. The three uses that I just highlighted. This is the full-blown version, or these are all the things that assessment can do for you if you use it as a GPS, if we understand assessment as a GPS in our learning journeys. So going back to this idea, we often talk about these two functions of assessment. Like if you think of these two examples, if you think of the chefs when they are tasting the food while they are cooking it, and if you think of the people eating the food at the restaurant, they are both assessing the food. They're both tasting it. They are both making some kind of judgment, but they're doing it in two different ways at two different moments for entirely different uses, for entirely different purposes. What the chefs are doing is more formative assessment. We're going to talk about the features, the classic features of formative assessment in a minute. But basically, they're tasting it while they're cooking it, and what they are doing, the goal of that is not to say this is good or this is not good, but this is to say, okay, what do we need to do to make this better? This has too much salt. Okay, then we need to do this. This is not ready yet. We need to leave it on the fire. We need to leave it on the stove for a couple more minutes. This needs more salt. We're going to put more salt into it. This is turning out really good. Okay, let's leave it and just continue with the next steps. Out at the restaurant, they're doing summative assessment at the table, because basically they are tasting the finished product. They are not going to send it back to the kitchen. You never send anything back to the kitchen ever, trust me. But basically, and the kind of decisions they're going to make are different, or the kind of information that is going to come out is different. They're going to say, I like it, I don't like it. This meets my expectations, it doesn't meet my expectations. This is good enough, or this is not acceptable. I am never coming back to this restaurant, or I am going to come here every single day of my life. So, but the kind of judgments they're passing is on the finished product, and the whole thing is done. And this is more like what we do with summative. But we're going to see that actually this is more of a continuum, that it is not that we have formative here, summative there, and the two never meet. It is just that some activities are more formative than others. Some activities are more summative than others, so there is a continuum. But also, we're going to be talking about this in 1 second, that formative and summative are not really things that describe activities. Not the thing that they are doing to assess, because the thing that they are doing to assess, the cooks and the people at the table, is basically the same. They are both bringing the soup to their mouths. So it is not in the method of assessment, it is not in the activity of assessment, it is in what they do with that. So let's explore those ideas. So the characteristic differences, I'm going to tell you things you already know. If you know anything about assessment, you probably know this, which is what is summative, what is formative. Let's review the classic ones really quickly. Summative uses of assessment usually come at the end of learning episodes. So at the end of a course, at the end of a year, at the end of secondary school, at the end of something, at the end of a unit, at the end of when you end a stage, when you end the elementary courses and you move into the intermediate courses, but usually at the end of learning episodes. Formative uses of assessment are built into the learning process. They happen while you are getting there. So it can be the quiz at the end of a lesson, it can be the quiz at the end of a unit, but it can also be the moment where you look at your students and you say, do you understand? Yes or no? And then they say yes, and some will say no. We're going to come back to this. We're going to talk about strategies and tools for formative assessment in a few minutes. So, but it happens while we are teaching. It happens while the process is going on. Another distinction is that summative uses, you aim to assess knowledge and to understand things at a given point in time. At this moment, at the end of a course, I am going to see what you can do, what you cannot do. And this is going to signal to me what you know, what you don't know, or I am going to infer it. I'm going to make some kind of judgment from that. A formative use tries to develop knowledge and understanding, tries to assist you in developing things. And this is already pointing us at ways in which formative and summative do not really work the way we think. Because when we take a test at the end of the year, If we use that information, if I take the results of the test that my students did at the end of the last course, which could be something formal and external like a Cambridge exam, or which could be the last big exam that they had at the school where they are studying with the previous teacher, and I use those results to say things like, on average, the learners did really well, but the writing parts for most of the learners were not really that good. So this year, I am going to put a lot of focus on the writing parts. But they did very well in listening, so I am going to use those abilities to do this. And this particular learner did great things in their writing, but some items of their grammar, so some bits about the grammar that they studied last year, they had difficulties. So I am going to give them reinforcement for those things. You are using your summative test, the test at the end of a year that matches all of the criteria in our summative column, but we are using it to develop knowledge and understanding, not just to assess it, not just to look at it and to judge it, but to develop that, to bring it further. So that very summative test at the end of a year can have a very formative use if we use it to develop knowledge and understanding, because the learning process continues. And what we are doing is building that test into the learning process. Another difference is that classic summative uses are usually static, one way. It's like there is a teacher, there is an examiner, and they judge the pupil. Whereas formative uses are more ongoing, and they tend to be more dynamic. We can have feedback that can be for the student, can be for the teacher. We usually have more elements of self and peer assessment when we look at these things. And then summative uses of assessment usually follow the flow of dialogue and interaction, of spontaneous dialogue and Sorry, this one is backwards, apologies. Summative uses usually follow a set of predefined questions or tasks. So for this one, I cross the columns, 1,000 apologies. Summative uses follow a set of predefined questions and tasks, like a formal test. And formative uses can follow, or sometimes usually follow, more like things which are more like spontaneous dialogue, like interaction. But we're going to be talking about this as two orientations of assessment. And we're going to go back to this assessment reform group, and specifically to the two masterminds, two big names for assessment in the classroom that you can follow online, we're going to be talking about today a lot, which are Paul Black and Dylan William, which are two of the big names from the assessment research group. And in Assessment in Schools Fit for Purpose, a very influential report that they published in 2009, they say that assessments can often be used for both formative and summative purposes. Formative and summative are not labels for different types or forms of assessment. They describe how assessments are used. In the example I told you before about we take a final test, we take an external test, we take a super summative test, and we use it for a formative purpose, which is to define what we are going to do next year, to give feedback for our learners, to help them get to the next stage in their learning. That is a very formative thing. Our use of that test is formative. On the other hand, if you take something which is very formative in nature, like a quiz at the end of a class, and you grade that quiz, and you use the information on that quiz to give your students a score that is going to go into their report cards. Or you just ask them to do a quiz, and then maybe you grade it, but you don't do anything with it. You don't give them any feedback. You just say, you got a B, you got a C. You don't even tell them which answer is correct, which one is incorrect. Is that really formative? The activity was, but the use, it wasn't even summative, it wasn't even assessment. But it is definitely not formative. So formative and summative are not ways, do not describe kinds of activities or kinds of assessment. They describe things that we do with assessment, ways in which we use assessment. So What makes assessment formative is the way we use it, because the goal is one. And going back to Black and William, assessment becomes formative when the evidence is used to adapt the teaching work to meet the needs. We make assessment formative when we take the evidence, the information, the data that assessment gives us, and we use it to adapt the work that we do with our learners to meet their needs, their learning goals. So you can take any of these activities and you can make them summative or formative depending on how you use it. Homework is usually formative, but you can use it to grade students without much feedback that is summative. A grammar quiz, I gave you that example a minute ago. A listening comprehension check, same thing. What are you going to do with those results? Are you just going to say, you got 6 questions out of 10, and that's all you do? Or are you going to say, okay, what happened in this answer? Why did you choose C instead of B? Why did you have difficulty? So that makes it formative. And so on. You can use any of these all the way to a test and use them formatively or summatively. And that is going to define what that assessment is like. So going back to Black and William, assessment is formative, they say, to the extent that evidence about student achievement, because at the end of the day, assessment is about gathering evidence about the achievement of your learners. To the extent that evidence about student achievement is elicited, that you take that evidence, you gather it, you interpret it, and you use it. As I was saying before, basically my slogan today is formative is as formative does. If we interpret, if we use that evidence for a formative use, then it's going to be formative. So assessment is formative to the extent that evidence is elicited, interpreted, and used by teachers, by learners, or their peers. So anyone can be the agent of this. It can be assessment by the teacher. It can be assessment by the students. We're going to be talking about this in the next few minutes. To make decisions about the next steps in instructions. So the focus of assessment, to make it formative, to make it meaningful, has to be not on looking back what you did, but on the next steps. What are you going to do to improve? What does this performance in a test mean in terms of how we can make you better? So, and then make decisions about the steps in instruction that are likely to be better or better founded than the decisions they would have taken in the absence of the evidence that was elicited. So the focus is on the next steps, and the focus is on making, as a teacher, better decisions on how to guide our learners' process. So, and how can we improve learning through assessments? The Assessment Reform Group talks about 5 some principles. One is that learners must receive effective feedback. We're going to be talking about each of these in a bit more detail, so I'm going to just run through them. The second one is that learners need to be actively involved in their learning and in their assessment. Then the teaching needs to adjust based on the results of the assessment. Then we need to acknowledge the impact of assessment on motivation and self-esteem. And learners need to assess themselves and understand how to improve. Let's look at these in a bit more detail. So learners receive effective feedback, but what is effective feedback? Effective feedback is basically a conversation. It needs to come as a conversation. It's not just communicating things. It needs to be interactive. It needs to be meaningful. It needs to be understandable. It needs to be something that I know what to do with. I know what you're saying. If we use difficult terms like in the writing, you have problems with your cohesive devices, and your learners are they going to know what a cohesive device is? That is clear to me. Is that clear to them? Feedback needs to be specific. So not things like, this is good writing, but this thing about your writing makes it good. It needs to be about something concrete, something specific, because that makes it meaningful. It needs to be timely. It needs to come when I need it. This is something that we talk about a lot, for instance, when we talk about feedback for speaking, when we talk about things that we correct on the spot and things that we correct as delayed. For things like writing, we assume that feedback for writing is always going to come later, that you're going to give me a piece of writing and then I'm going to take it home, or I'm going to give you the feedback after you have written it. I am not going to give you live feedback while you are writing. But this is very important too. If feedback needs to come at the right moment, not too early, not too late, when I am ready for it, when I need it, when it is still meaningful. Feedback needs to be future focused. It needs to be about what I am going to do, not just about what I did. And it needs to focus on the process, not the person. It is not about telling you that you failed, that you are bad. It's about this thing that you did in this sentence. There are better ways of saying that. This way of using this tense was not correct. So we focus on what happened and not in you. Good feedback needs to involve learners, because learners need to be involved in their learning and assessment. Learners need to know how, and they are going to be assessed. They need to know on what they're going to be assessed. They need to participate in the process of assessment in some way. And they need to reflect on the outcomes. You do not just give out grades. You think about them. You go back to those. You give them opportunities to review their performance and their results. Because all of this connects to good teaching, and teaching needs to adjust on the results of assessment. We know that, by definition, good teaching is responsive. We need to respond to our students. We are not machines. They are not machines. It is a communication. Good teaching is a loop, a kind of feedback loop. When they do something, we react to that. They react to our reaction. We react to their reaction. So it is constantly coming and going. Good teaching needs to be based on a broad evidence base. Good teaching needs to take into consideration as much information as we can gather about our learners and their learning. No amount of information is ever enough, really, for us as teachers. We need to squeeze every single opportunity for that. We also need to acknowledge the impact of assessment on motivation and self-esteem. The fact that we need to reinforce a positive mindset. So what is the difference between telling somebody you have failed and telling somebody these are the areas where you can improve, these are the things you need to do to get better? Absolutely different. The effect, the impact of one and the other. The mindset that we want is a mindset where assessment is going to tell me what I need to do to be better. It's not going to be the judgment that is going to tell me how I failed. Because that is bad. That is bad for assessment. That is bad for learning. That is bad for our development as human beings. And then it also needs to reinforce positive identities. What are the differences between telling somebody you have failed at this, you did this in a way that was not the best you could do, and telling somebody you are a failure? Often, the results of assessment and the results of sort of the feedback that we give our learners in the learning process is interpreted by them, by society, by whatever, in ways which tell them about their identity, that they are good learners or not, that they can learn English or not, that they're good at English, bad at English. I don't know if you're good or bad at English. I'm not going to tell you that based on this exercise that we did. Learners also need to assess themselves. They need to understand how to improve. We need to foster feedback that is actionable, that tells them what to do, that they can act on. And then self and peer assessment, which we need to engage with. They foster knowledge, because the goal that we want in teaching is that they can assess themselves later in life when they are no longer in our classrooms. And then self and peer assessment foster motivation. They make learning motivating. And self and peer assessment also foster autonomy, the idea that they can take control of their learning and their use of English. So, if we think in terms of learning as a journey, what is best, a car or a helicopter? Well, if you are going to make this journey, probably a helicopter is going to be better than a car. If you're going to travel here, probably a helicopter is not going to help you. So it is not about a car or a helicopter being better. It is not about one way of assessing or one instrument or one form of assessment being good or bad. It is about what is your need. What is your environment? How can you use this? And which is the most appropriate approach for the thing that you need to do? If we think of things like teacher-led classroom assessment or standardized summative assessment, each of them have pros and cons. Here are some of the cons of teacher-led classroom assessment. Here are some of the pros. Standardized summative assessment also have pros and cons. Here are some of the cons. Here are some of the pros. So are we going to choose one or the other? Are we going to say, I am going to do 100% standardized tests? I'm going to do Cambridge tests, and that's the only test they're going to do? We wouldn't recommend that. I am Cambridge. I don't recommend that. Are we just going to do teacher-led classroom assessment? Well, there are things that classroom assessment is not really strong at, which standardized assessment can give you. What we want is a balance. What we want is a combination. What we want is a good balance of both. A good balance that basically answers the questions that we need to move into our learning journeys. And which are those questions? I've narrowed it down to 4. Question number 1 is, what do I want to know? What do I need to know? Question number 2 is, what is the best way to find out that thing that I need to know? Question number 3 is, how is this going to feed back into my learning? How am I going to use those results? And we always have to think about this from the beginning. And then the last one is, how confident do I need to be? If you are going to make a big decision like, are you ready to enter university? Are you ready to graduate from school? Are you ready to move on to the next course? Then I need to be really confident. And I am going to use assessment instruments that are going to be very strict and very rigorous that can help me do that. If I am just making a quick decision about, do I need to spend one more class teaching the present perfect, or are they ready to move into the next unit, then that's about, I don't really need to go that far. There are things that I don't need to worry about. So let's talk a couple minutes about how to make it happen. So some instruments to make formative assessment happen. And for this, we're going to go back to Dylan Wiliam and a very interesting exchange that he had on Twitter with a Twitter user called Dr. Chips. Dylan Wiliam wrote, making errors in learning is not just okay, it can lead to better learning. A beautiful idea. He wrote the tweet, and he got this response from Dr. Chips. I have a Mistakes of the Week board for the week's best errors. We celebrate them as learning opportunities. I love that idea. I don't know who Dr. Chips is, but I want him to be my doctor. He's not a doctor, he's a teacher, but you know what I mean. So Dylan Wiliam replied, excellent idea, and tell your students mistakes are evidence of the work I gave you is tough enough to make you smarter. Chips replied, I pass the message on. Pupils want to know if you have ever made mistakes and if you have learned from them. And what was Dylan Wiliam's response? All the time. Example of a really big mistake, calling formative assessment rather than something like responsive teaching, or starting with feedback as the key aspect of formative assessment when the first step is finding out what students think. So the approach that I'm talking about, the formative use of assessment, Dylan Wiliam says, and I couldn't agree more, that it is basically about responsive teaching, making teaching more learner-focused, putting our focus not on my curriculum, not on Unit 1, Unit 2, Unit 3, but on what is going on with our learners, where they are, how I can help them get to the goals. And then it is also about finding out what they think, how they feel. Assessment exists because we cannot really measure a cognitive process the way we measure things like temperature. If I want to know the temperature today, I have an instrument, I have a thermometer, and I turn it on, and the thermometer tells me, it measures something that gives me a reading of the temperature. I cannot really do that with learning. I cannot like open a window inside somebody's head and see what is going on inside. I cannot really explore it like that, which is why we need assessment. So, ways of diagnosing learning, things that we are using all the time today. Our students just got back to class. I mean, we haven't seen them, or we saw them sporadically and in weird ways. And this is September, and for some of you in Peru, maybe you've seen your students for 4 or 5 months running, but you haven't really seen them in 2020, 2021, or you saw them on and off virtually, etc., etc. So how can we diagnose? Things like end of unit tests, things like sample tests, things like word lists, which you can have for like exams or levels, things like can-do summaries, defining, doing our diagnostics based on the can-do statements that match the levels you are using if you work with the Common European Framework. But let's talk about some specific tools for formative assessment. So first of all, self and peer assessment strategies, ways in which we can ask learners to look into the work that they are doing and how they feel. One is, for instance, traffic lights, like green, yellow, red, like a traffic light, or thumbs up, thumbs down. So how are you doing? And then they can have green, yellow, or red cards like these. So if they put up the green card, it means like super good. Or they can say doing fine, maybe I need a little bit of work, or I don't really get this, teacher. You can do this all the time in your classes about the explanation you have just given, about the text they just read, at the end of the class about did this class really help you understand the present perfect or how to make comparisons in English? Do you feel that you can do this? And that is a self-assessment. Another one is, a classic one is a KWL chart. K is for things that I know, W is for things that I want to know, and L is for things that I learned. And a KWL chart is something that you usually ask students to do at the end of the class. So what do you know now that you didn't know at the beginning of the class? What do you want to know to extend the things that we studied today, that we did today? And what things did you learn today? So what things do you feel you can do? What things would you want to be able to do? And what things did you acquire today specifically? This is a great way for students to assess their knowledge and for us to look into and to plan our next class. Another one is 3 things, even simpler than that. Write 3 things that you learned today. So just 3 bullet points. And then how did you feel? And use something like emojis. On fire, or really bad, or what? So use some kind of rating that is graphic and fun and cool. And you can use that to see what things your learners feel that they picked up. How did they feel about it? What would you do differently next time? A variation of that is 2 stars and a wish. 2 stars and a wish is 2 stars are 2 things that I learned today, 2 things that I feel that I can do based on the work that we did today. So 2 positives. And the wish is 1 thing that maybe wasn't very clear, 1 thing that I feel that I need to work harder on, 1 thing that I feel that I cannot still do. So 2 stars, 2 positives, and a wish, something that I wish for my next class. And again, we ask our students to do this at the end of a class, or at the end of a unit, or at the end of the week. And then we take it home, we review that, and we use that for our next week. Not next month, but next week. Longer term, we can use things like portfolios. I am not going to talk about portfolios in detail because that would be like a whole other session. But what a portfolio does is take this idea of evaluating your own work or gathering a collection and doing some kind of reflection on your work, but doing it over a much longer period of time. And for that, you need some kind of check sheet, some kind of assessment criteria, some kind of rubric to basically know, or to basically know how to analyze my own work. Then we use things like success criteria. So ways in which, how are our students going to know that they know? So, and they need to be aware of what the assessment criteria is with something like this. These are the assessment subscales, the way we use rubrics in writing for our key exam in Cambridge. So this tells you what is expected at different dimensions. And then we need to think of this as a journey, as an assessment for learning journey. You cannot expect students to just assess their knowledge or have an opinion about their knowledge and their performance just like that. We are not born knowing these things. So this is why I presented that as a sequence. Something like a traffic light is a pretty simple tool that you can do from just your own reaction, not a lot of reflection going on. 2 Stars and a Wish requires a bit more reflection, a bit more work. A portfolio definitely requires a lot more work. And something like summative assessment is going to come at the end and is going to put all of that self-assessment into perspective. This way, if you think of assessment as something that develops with the learning journey, suddenly you are able to do much more things. You are able to think about that as having steps and developing in different dimensions. You start by reflecting on the goals, then you move to self and peer assessment, then you move to critical thinking to develop the skills, the tools that they're going to use. Then you think of it longitudinally over time. And then you move from something that has less teacher input and more student production. And then you have a record of what your students have done during the term, like a portfolio. And finally, you can continue the portfolio between now and the end of a course. And at the end of a course, you can complement that with summative assessment. If you think of a strategy like that, then if you think of that like your assessment curriculum, this is going to develop all the dimensions of your learning from assessment. So these are the ideas that I wanted to share with you today. So this will be a great moment to turn off my presentation and to just look at some of the questions that may have come across. If you can give us a hand, SBS team. So I see a question from Roberto here. How much assessment should students get? And how could we know they follow our advice? Well, how much assessment they could get, if you think of assessment the way we have been describing it, the way we have been working with it, it's basically they're being assessed all the time. It's because we think of assessment as things that happen during a lesson. We think of assessment as things that we do every moment. Basically, a good teacher is looking at their students and getting feedback all the time and giving feedback all the time. So we assess every minute. Now, how much summative assessment, how many tests do we need to give them? That's a different question. Now, how can we know that they're following our advice? Well, ideally, your assessment strategy, your next assessment should tell you that. I hope that helps. Let's see if there's any other questions. How to guide students to efficient feedback? That is a good question. I would start by asking, we can always start with them, saying what kind of advice, don't use the word feedback, but what kind of recommendations do you think help you? How can I help you? How would you like this information? Because each of us is different, because there isn't one answer that fits all. And then there are many frameworks that you can use for feedback. You can always explore that. We talked about this thing of making it actionable, making it specific, making it timely. If we just begin and making it meaningful, if you just think about how can I make this more meaningful for my learners? How can I make sure that the feedback that they get is something that they can act upon? And then what is the best moment for them to receive it, and what is the best way for them to receive it? Those would be great, simple starting points to improve the quality of the feedback. How can I reduce the stress in my students when they try, but their results are not as expected? So this comes back to mindset, because this is the question about mindset. There is a book for this one. There is a book and there is an author to recommend. You can check out sessions that this person has done on YouTube, or you can look for the book, and I strongly recommend it. It's a great book. There is a book called Mindsets by a person called Carol Dweck, D-W-E-C-K, Carol Dweck. And basically she talks about fixed mindsets and growth mindsets. People with a fixed mindset are basically think that you are good at something or not. And then if you pass a test, it is evidence that you are good. If you fail the test, it means that, yeah, you suck. People who have a growth mindset think of learning as a process. And they look at the results of assessment as things that tell them how to get better, what they still need to do to become better. So working on the mindset is a great way to reduce the stress, because that is the thing that puts all of assessment into perspective.
Thank you very much. We have some other questions. So Pablo, if you be nice, maybe you can read them on YouTube, and maybe you can answer some of them. But for now, we're going to stop. Thanking you again, and apologizing for the technical difficulties that we had at the beginning. I do want to read your bio, if it's possible, again, to say information more accurately. So,
Okay.
If
I am okay. I am okay if you don't, but I just do not want to take. I know Gustavo Gonzalez, who is a good friend. His career is impressive. I do not want to take credit for the things that he has achieved.
Indeed. Let's be truthful. So I would say then that Pablo Toledo is an English teacher and a teacher trainer from the IES Joaquin Gonzalez. He holds a postgraduate advanced certificate in educational assessment from the University of Cambridge and a diploma in education policy from Universidad Torquato di Tella. Before joining Cambridge Assessment English, he managed projects in the areas of remote teaching, internationalization of higher education, and language teaching to refugees for the British Council, and led the education department of Buenos Aires Herald newspaper. He is the vice president of LALTA, Latin American Association of Language Testing and Assessment. Is that right?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Pablo.
Thank you to everybody for spending a part of your Saturday afternoon with us and for participating in this session. Thank you to the SBS team once again for the welcome and the invitation.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And now this is our final session of the TDC 2022. So let's give a big welcome to Edpuzzle. Edpuzzle is an edtech platform that lets you embed questions in a video to engage students and check for understanding. So let's find out a bit more about Edpuzzle with this short video. Let's go, Team SBS.
Kids these days are learning how to do almost everything through video. Videos feel personal, are highly visual, and let you control the pace at which you learn. But when you try to show a video in class, you might not always get the best results. Sometimes it's hard to know if students are paying attention or if they're actually learning anything. But with Edpuzzle, turning a video into a dynamic lesson is easy. You can add questions anywhere in your video, so you can check comprehension and get students to engage in critical thinking. You may not always have time to find a video and add your own questions, but don't worry. The entire Edpuzzle community has got you covered. Scroll through our library of teacher-created content and get inspired by what other educators like you are doing in their own classrooms. Or choose from our standards-aligned Edpuzzle Originals, instructional videos with built-in practice created with you and your students in mind. With the time you save, you can focus on other important things. Sometimes the video content you're looking for doesn't exist yet. So why not try making it yourself? Edpuzzle's screen recording tool lets you create the video that fits your students' needs. When you're done, you can edit the video and embed questions all in one go. Your students will appreciate seeing a familiar, friendly face as they learn. Once you're ready to assign your lesson, that's when the magic happens. You can hold students accountable for watching the entire video and monitor as they watch it at their own pace. Then, use Edpuzzle's real-time analytics to figure out who's ready to move on to the next lesson and who needs a little more help. That way, you can decide how to best use your time in the classroom. So, the next time you want to assign a video, let Edpuzzle be your guide. You'll be joining a network of educators who are changing the face of 21st century teaching, one video lesson at a time.
Great. Now we're going to introduce our last speaker, who will close this TDC 2022. It's a great pleasure for us to introduce Gabriel Garnica, who will talk about the impact of video on education. Gabriel is a psychologist from UNAM, FES Zaragoza, and a teacher with 15 years of experience. He's also a customer success coordinator LATAM at Basel. Welcome to the TDC, Gabriel.
Thank you so much. And I would like to start by thanking SBS for the invitation to this event. It's a really a pleasure to be here with you today in this Saturday and to be part of the last session that we are going to be checking. Well, this session of TDC is going to be about, or is about, teaching future generations. And talking about that, my topic is going to be the impact of video on education, because I think it's very, very related. And during the session, we are going to talk about different data, different information that is going to support this idea. And I'm going to give you some suggestions on how to implement the video on in your classes. So let's start with this presentation. And well, first of all, as I was telling you, normally different generations select different type of content to learn and to share communication and to just simply share ideas. So I will say that definitely this generation is selecting the video as one of the main ways of communicating and sharing content. So to start with the session, I would like to ask you a question, that is, what do you think of the use of video in class? Please, if you would like, if you can type your answer in the chat, I would love to read some of your answers. But meanwhile you do it, I would like to say that video is definitely one of the different tools or different resources that we can use in a class, especially when we talk about, for example, teaching a language. You can use it in different moments and for different purposes. Obviously, for example, the video can be used as a great introduction of a topic, but you can always go and show your students a little bit of a culture by using a video, using the use of a language in a real life situation, because sometimes whenever we teach our students, we can be very good at explaining the information and giving all the grammar rules and everything, but definitely when students see this information in something real, in a real situation, it's more productive or even better for them. So here I'm reading some answers. Using videos in class creates interest in the students. That's great. For the TikToker generation, and we are going to be talking about in a moment. Thank you. Making the class a little more interesting and using dynamics. We have also some answers from Michael that says it's a great way to engage our students. Let me see what else we have over here. Videos make our work easier and the whole class enjoy it. So yeah, there are different ways of using video, and thank you for your comments. So in this case, as you can see, like, it's great that you are using video. That's the first thing that I would like to say. It's great that you are using video, because in this case we have this tool is like, this resource is like a great way to get to our students, to get to what they are doing. And I have some data here that is going to help me support the ideas that I'm sharing with you. So give me a second. So check, for example, we know video. Someone mentioned that the TikTok generation, that they love to share videos in TikTok. They love to make, to dance some videos. They love to share viral videos about some different things. And definitely here we have some information that is going to support these ideas that I'm telling you. For example, we have that 80% of teens use YouTube. And if we talk about future generations, that is telling us a lot of information about them, about the kind of content that they prefer to use. And some other information that is really, really interesting is that a teenager watches 68 videos on average per day. Imagine this. We are talking about 68 videos that in this case one teenager watches in one day. Maybe, I don't know what you think, but I will say that sometimes this number is a little low. Maybe they watch a little more videos, because someone mentioned TikTok before. And if you think about TikTok, usually the videos are very short and you are watching a lot of videos, so maybe it's more than that. But something that is definitely very relevant information about this that I'm telling you about the video is that 500 hours of content are uploaded every minute to YouTube. Imagine that. It's been crazy that during this time that I've been speaking, many hours of video content are uploaded to YouTube. So that's definitely something really important to think about. And speaking of for future generations, it's going to help us a lot to really get to them and make them interesting, no? Or interest them in our class. So something that is also really important about video content is that here we have some of the most popular content that you can find or that our students watch on the internet. No, for example, in this case, I imagine that if you think about video or if you think about YouTube, for example, the first two things that you will think about is one, music videos, and two, viral videos. No, normally if you think about TikTok, you think about watching these funny videos about different things. Usually if you think about YouTube, you think about watching music videos about different artists, no, that they have millions and millions of views of these different videos. But it's really nice to see that besides that, well, we have a very important use of videos, music videos and viral videos, but it's very nice to see in this graphic that we also have video tutorials and educational videos as a very popular content that different people consume, no? Even we have more use of educational videos than live videos and that product review videos. So as you can see in this case, that's basically the way that we have to follow, no? Our students really like the video. It's something that they use for recreational content or recreational activities. So now we have to use that use of video to the educational part because it can be really relevant for them, no? So, and something that I really like about this graphic is that we have educational videos are even more popular than influencers and video blogs. That if normally also that's very common and very popular, no? Okay. But why should we use videos to teach our students? Well, in this case, we have something very important and very relevant. That is that through the years, the attention span of our students is is getting shorter. No, if you think about our students, it's really hard to keep them interested in the class. So we have to make use of different tools, different resources to catch their attention and to get them into the class so that they can continue learning. So definitely videos increase students' engagement because we are giving them different, in this case, with different options, and we can cover even different kind of intelligences, no, and different ways of learning, because not all our students learn the same way. In this case, for example, if we present a video, it's something visual that is going to catch their attention, and especially if they are very young, if we have young learners, videos are going to be calling their attention, and they are going to be paying attention to our videos, no, or to our class. And besides that, we also, with this engagement that we can create, we also transform videos into an active learning experience, because we are depending on the type of activities, the type of activities that we have in the video, we can make our classes even a little more dynamic and making our students an active part of their learning. Besides that, videos allow diversity and personalized learning, because in this case, for example, if we have a class and we present this specific content, maybe whenever we see that a student has a problem with a topic, we can reinforce information by sharing some specific content in a video format so that they can continue learning, and also so that they can go or follow their own pace. No, they don't have to work at the same pace as other students. They can do it at their own pace. And besides that, for example, something very important, a video is going to allow you to repeat the information but several times, no? So that kind of interaction, that kind of work that we are giving to our students is going to let them have a better experience in thinking about learning and enrich their experience. And besides that, we can also save class time for higher level learning. Normally, video, for example, can be used as an excellent tool for flipped classroom, for example. No, you can introduce videos or have videos before you go to a class, before you present your class, so that you can introduce some topics, or so that you can introduce some concept, for example. No? So whenever you go to your class, your students will have some previous knowledge about the topic that we are going to be checking, and this is going to help us have the chance to, for example, in this case, go directly, for example, to the practice, no? Reducing the time of presentation and having more time for practice, active practice with our students. And that's really, really interesting and really important for classes. And besides that, also with the video, you can work with the different, with the language skills. Obviously, for listening, it's a great tool. Video is a great tool for them to listen to different pronunciations. In this case, you can even have, well, for example, for listening, you can be working with music, no? So that they can listen to different pronunciations and also to different rhythms. Also, for example, you can have, as I told you before, real life situations where students see how to use vocabulary that was presented in the class. So with these kind of situations, they can even see the difference between using a concept in one situation or another, no? And well, just in this case, it can also be an excellent practice for an exam. If you are preparing your students for an exam, obviously with this listening practice that you can have through the video, you are going to give them the practice that they need to get them prepared for this exam. Besides that, we have reading, where I know that we are talking about a visual thing, we are talking about videos, but also in this case with videos, you can work with practice, with reading, sorry, because you can have subtitles so that students can be reading the information that they are listening to. So that is we are going to give our students the opportunity to have like a double practice, no? Because they are going to be listening to something, and also they are going to be able to read the information so that they can read what they are listening, and obviously so that they can understand a little better what the conversation is about, or what the practice that we are doing is about. Also with video, we can talk about speaking, because, well, normally, if you are presenting a video, you can give your students the opportunity to discuss after you watch the video. They can talk about this topic that we are watching. They can make use of the concepts that we are checking in the video in a conversation with a partner. But imagine that not only we share videos, but we also let our students create their own videos. That is going to help them a lot, because they are going to have the chance to show what they are learning, no? And also, well, to listen to themselves, and also to listen to their partners. And with this kind of information, we can have positive feedback and, as I told you, like enrich the experience that they will have, no? And writing, with writing, in this case, just as similar as speaking, we can have the opportunity to let our students, for example, write some opinions about the video that we watch. Or for example, if you have them create their own videos, they can write whenever they are planning their script for the video. So it's basically like a full experience for the different kind of skills that we have, and that is going to help them a lot whenever they work with a language and whenever they use the video, no? But in this case, talking about teachers also have a great opportunity and a great experience when they use the video, no? For example, to start some numbers about teachers and opinions about the video is that 80% of teachers think that video increases the achievement of students, no? In this case, as I told you, we make the class a little more dynamic or diverse with different kind of content, and we make our students a little happier. And as I told you, we can make them active learners. And in this case, obviously, if we have these characteristics, like for example, funnier class, more dynamic class, and with different kind of content, obviously our students are going to be giving better results or learning in a better way, no? Besides that, 90% of teachers see video as playing a very critical role in education. And that's why we are here, no? Because we want to discuss about teaching future generations, and video is going to play a critical role in the future. So that's why it's really nice or really important that you start using this tool, this resource. And besides that, we have 83% of teachers that recognize that obviously video has benefits for their students, but also it's they have a better teaching experience because you can be a little more creative in some cases. We don't have to use a video from the internet. We can also create our own videos. And obviously, that's going to be a little better for our students because it's going to be personalized. They are going to see us on the screen. They are going to, really listen to what we have to say to them and what we have to teach to them. Because maybe if we find a video on the internet, it's going to have different content. But if we create something ourselves, we are going to give students what we need to present to them, and they are going to see our face, so they are going to be happy with us in the screen, on the screen. So that's why we also have an 83% that think that the teaching experience is also better. Oh, sorry, 1 second. Okay, and okay, sorry. Okay. So, and also, it's very important that we can start using video in classes, but also it's very important to mention that a video by itself is not going to really give us the results that we want. It's necessary for education that we have different tools that are going to help us to have a better experience, a better learning process, and that we can follow what our students are doing. Because if you share a video, for example, maybe you tell them like, oh, okay, you go to YouTube, you have to look for this topic and start watching this video. But maybe our students, some of them are going to watch the video, some of them are going to watch a part of the video and maybe they see a suggested video and they go to that video. Maybe some of them just ask their partners about different comments about the video, so that they can summarize some information of the video. And we don't really know what the students are doing with this video. So that's why when we talk about the education, it's good to have a tool that is going to help us to work with these videos in a better way, to get better results, and to really be having this information that is going to help us even plan our classes better. And that's why we have a tool like Edpuzzle. And maybe in this case, I know that we already watched this video, but I'm going to present it again because I really think that everything that I've been telling you is going to make a match with the information that you will find in the video. So please pay attention to the video and we will talk about it in a second.
Kids these days are learning how to do almost everything through video. Videos feel personal, are highly visual, and let you control the pace at which you learn. But when you try to show a video in class, you might not always get the best results. Sometimes it's hard to know if students are paying attention or if they're actually learning anything. But with Edpuzzle, turning a video into a dynamic lesson is easy. You can add questions anywhere in your video, so you can check comprehension and get students to engage in critical thinking. You may not always have time to find a video and add your own questions, but don't worry. The entire Edpuzzle community has got you covered. Scroll through our library of teacher-created content and get inspired by what other educators like you are doing in their own classrooms. Or choose from our standards-aligned Edpuzzle originals, instructional videos with built-in practice created with you and your students in mind. With the time you save, you can focus on other important things. Sometimes the video content you're looking for doesn't exist yet. So why not try making it yourself? Edpuzzle's screen recording tool lets you create the video that fits your students' needs. When you're done, you can edit the video and embed questions all in one go. Your students will appreciate seeing a familiar, friendly face as they learn. Once you're ready to assign your lesson, that's when the magic happens. You can hold students accountable for watching the entire video and monitor as they watch it at their own pace. Then, use Edpuzzle's real-time analytics to figure out who's ready to move on to the next lesson and who needs a little more help. That way, you can decide how to best use your time in the classroom. So, the next time you want to assign a video, let Edpuzzle be your guide. You'll be joining a network of educators who are changing the face of 21st century teaching, one video lesson at a time.
Okay. Okay, excellent. So as you can see in this case, when we talk about the video, or whenever we saw the video, sometimes, for example, videos can be used. Imagine that you have to show your students a process, how to create something. So in this case, for example, it's different or it's difficult to be in front of the class, having the students watch the process that you are making live, and having all of them follow you at the same time. Because as I told you, we have students going in different at different rhythms, no, different pace, their own pace. So whenever you share a video, for example, that you record yourself showing the process, they can stop the video, see what they are doing, and then whenever they are ready to continue, they can continue watching the video. No, so it's a better way of sharing different videos. And in this case, it's important to have a tool that is going to give you like a better idea or a better help whenever you are using videos. No, and this is why we should use Edpuzzle, for example, or any tool that you want to talk about videos, but in this case specifically Edpuzzle. It's great because you can use it as a digital code teacher. As I told you, with Edpuzzle, you can create a lesson, then share it with your students in a same page. You will be able to see information about your class, to see what your students are making with this video that you are sharing, and it's going to be a better way of sharing information. For example, I was asking you a little bit before about how you share videos with your students. Sometimes, as I told you, normally we share a link, no, that is going to take them to a page like YouTube or to a different page, and maybe this page we are going to find some commercials about different products, or maybe in this case you see different recommended videos that are distraction for our students, or maybe we have comments. No, you have comments that are going to be like a distractor for our students. And instead of really paying attention to what they have to do with the video, they are going to go somewhere else. No, and that's why it's important in education to have a tool like this, because it's going to help you a lot. Something that I really like about Edpuzzle, for example, is that you can work with the students' accountability. We have a tool that it's going to help you prevent skipping. So students watch 100% of the video. And besides that, as I told you, they have a clean page because there is fewer ads. We have secure videos, and there are no suggested videos. So basically it's like just a presentation, just a video, and that's all they have to do. And I will say that another thing that I have to say about Edpuzzle is that you can add questions, you can add notes at very specific moments during the video. So you can pause the video and present a question so that the students respond. Because it's not the same to present a video, for example, a 10-minute video, and asking them at the end, like 2 or 3 questions about what happened during the video, or what happened at the first moment of the video, the first minute of the video, than asking the question in this exact moment when the information is presented, so that you can really get best out of the activity that you are making. No, because if you leave the questions at the end, it's going to be easier for students to forget information or just to get distracted with something else. No, besides that, we also have another tool that, for example, if you are watching a video and if you move to another tab, for example, the video is paused until you come back to the activity, so that you can really watch the video and not just let the video run until the end while you are making another thing. No, so that's really, really nice also from Edpuzzle. As I told you, secure videos, fewer ads, and no suggested videos that are really, really nice, because we are focused on the activities that we are making. And also we have real-time analytics, like everything that you work with your students, for example, like all the questions that you have, all the answers that you receive from your students, you will see it at the moment. And it's really nice because you can, as I told you, you can start planning your classes using this information that the view from your students is giving you. So it's going to be like a better experience for your students and for you in teaching. And besides that, what are some suggestions to use Edpuzzle in the class or a video in the class? Well, obviously, as I told you, the first thing that we recommend a lot is using flipped classroom model in your class with video or with Edpuzzle. Why? Because as I was telling you before, if you have to present concepts in your class or a topic in your class, you can share with your students a video before the class so they can start having an idea of the topics that we are going to be checking. And as I told you before, whenever you get to the class, you will have more time for practice and less time for presentation. And even with this information that Edpuzzle gives you about the results from your students, you can see, for example, the topics that are more difficult for them, and plan your classes according to that information that Edpuzzle is giving you. Because if you see that one student has a problem with the one specific part of the video, well, maybe you can just talk to your student and see what happened there, no? But if you have 10 students, 20 students with the same problem in the same moment in the video, well, that is going to give you some information about everyone having a problem with that part, no? So it's the same in this case. We can have this practice and this flipped classroom model in our class using video and Edpuzzle. Besides that, for example, we also have choice boards that is going to give the students the opportunity to follow their own path, in a way to say it, no? Because whenever you create videos, you can give the options to put some links into the notes, into the questions that you are giving to your students, and they can select which one is better for them. Also, we can talk about social emotional learning. We can talk about differentiated lessons that, as I told you before, if you see that one student is having trouble with a topic, well, you can work with this student with this specific topic, and you don't have to share this information with all the class, but you can do it with just one specific student that is the one that needs the help with the topic, no? And obviously, when students have these videos, they can watch the video again, they can answer the questions the times that they need, and they can take the time to really understand and to really learn what they have to learn, no? And if before they have problems with the topic, maybe after they receive this other activity, it's going to help them a lot. Formative assessment, we previously talked about formative assessment, with the previous presentation with Pablo. So definitely with Edpuzzle, and I'll give you some examples, but you have the opportunity to really have even a quiz inside Edpuzzle so that you can see what your students are learning and the way that they are doing it, no? And you can provide feedback inside the platform, which makes everything more interesting for you as a teacher, because it's a complete tool that you will have to use in the class, no? Something else that is really nice about Edpuzzle is that we have something called live mode. Because normally in this case, for example, we don't know how to use videos in the class sometimes. So it's really hard sometimes to use videos in the class because we don't know if it depends on many situations. For example, if we have the tools to use in the class and to project the video, no? If our students have devices to use to start watching videos and stuff. So with Edpuzzle, you have different possibilities. It's kind of flexible in a way to say it, because you can maybe do this activity, as I told you, with Flipped Classroom before the class. You can assign it as a homework so that they can watch it at home. But maybe you can do it in the class if they have their own device. Or maybe you can do it all together, where you are the one that is going to lead the class and the questions that we are going to present, no? But in a way, students can answer from the device and well, you can see all the answers on the projection, no? So that's a nice way to work with Edpuzzle. And the live mode. Also, audiobooks. Especially when the students are learning a language, audiobooks can be really nice because, well, obviously with audiobooks, students can be listening to the information that is presented in the lecture. So if you have a video in an audiobook, you can even have, for example, the script of what they are listening. Students can pause the video, and maybe you can even give a note where you can access or send a link so that they can go, for example, to a dictionary to check some parts of the vocabulary, no? So that's something else that you can do, and that is going to be really productive for them. And obviously, project-based learning. with a tool that we also have that is student projects, where you can assign or leave the opportunity to your students to create videos and to have all the experience of editing the video, adding questions, adding notes, and having like everything to share with the class, to share with our students, and to make it like even more interesting for them, because they are not just sitting and watching a video, but they are creating their own videos. No, so it's really interesting to work with this project-based learning model, because it's going to help you a lot, and it's going to be a little more interesting for your students. Okay, 1 second, please. Okay, so how does Edpuzzle support English language learners? Well, in this case, basically, as I told you, you can have this you can provide immediate feedback to your students. We have, as you saw in the video, we have, for example, this opportunity to add questions, to add notes to the video that you are presenting at very specific moments. And in this case, for example, if you have, well, you have 3 kinds of activities to assign. You can assign open-ended questions, open questions. You can add multiple choice questions, or you can add notes. In the case, for example, of multiple choice answers, no, you can leave the students feedback, and they receive the grade immediately. They know if the answer was wrong or right. So that's really nice, because in the moment you can even receive the information in your account, and you can even write a comment on what your students are making. Besides that, as I told you, personalized learning, and here we have some suggestions on how to work with videos and how to work with these videos in your class. No, so the first tip is selecting videos with subtitles. No, so that's really nice. As I told you, it's good whenever your students can listen and read what they are listening to, because they get a better experience and they can really identify what they are listening. Sometimes listening is really hard. No, I think from my experience as a teacher, I would say that students have a lot of, one of the biggest problems of students is listening, because they, well, obviously I'm speaking, no, but listening is really hard for them, because different accents, different rhythms that people have. So, and even sometimes if we have like more noise, for example, from the street or from other things, it's harder to understand what other people are saying. So in this case, whenever you have subtitles in a video, in a conversation, obviously that's going to be better, because they can really identify what they are listening to. Also, that's something that I really like, and that I've been applying a lot with my experience as giving classes, is that I try to use videos to connect new learning and abstract concepts. And connect these new learning and abstract concepts to real world examples. What I told you, I really like, for example, to use videos from sitcoms, maybe, or from real situations, real conversations, where my students can see what we check before in the class, and see it in real use. No, because as I told you, it's necessary to give our students this experience. And with the video, we can have them. We can even, for example, take them to a different place. No, it's not the same to talk about London, for example, and tell them like, oh yeah, London, a beautiful city in England, and you can see this, you can see that. No, just by telling them, but it's better to show them a video where they can see everything that we are talking about, and that is going to give them this better approach to, or a better learning experience. No, and I think it's a better way to do it. Besides that, for example, something that I told you that is really, really nice is that the students can access and rewatch videos from anywhere. No, having this opportunity, as I told you before, for example, if your students are following a process on how to create something, you are the one giving the process. If you create a video with the process and then share this video with your students will have the opportunity to rewatch the video the times that are necessary to really understand, or to really do the process as it should be. So that's another really nice to do whenever we watch videos, no, or we share a project. And also we have another tip is support learners at their own pace, because, well, they can pause, they can continue, they can go back, they can stop watching the video because maybe it was too much information and do it other day, or maybe they just watch it later. Different things, no? And okay, I'm checking some questions very fast that you are making on the comments. And for example, we say, Roxana says, what do you recommend using more graded videos or authentic materials like tech talks? Definitely depends on what you want to check with your class, no? As I told you, for example, if it is like a warm-up topic, no, a warm-up topic that you have to check with your students, I will recommend a TED Talk because it's going to give you a lot of context about the situation. But if you want to check grammar, it's going to be a different thing to do. Normally, a TED Talk is not going to help you about grammar. It's going to help you with other things like with a warm-up topic, but not really like a grammar topic. For a grammar thing, we can use, for example, a sitcom. No, you can watch a sitcom, or you can watch an explanation for a grammar topic. So definitely that's a great thing to do. And besides that, for example, for vocabulary, we can also watch these sitcom or cartoon videos where they show the contents, they show the concepts, and students can see how they are using the vocabulary in real life situations. No? Okay. We have another question that says, can students insert comments or questions? Yes, whenever they create their projects, they have the opportunity to add questions, to add notes, and that is part of the experience. They have to do it because they can, in this way, not just select a video from YouTube, for example, but also they can make a comment on why they select this video, on what they think about something that happened in the video, and make it a little more interesting for them, not just saying like, oh, the teacher is asking for a video, so I'm going to share this video and that's all I have to do. No, so no, they have the opportunity to create something better, something with more information. Then they are asking, is it possible like Canva? I mean, does it use templates? Well, yes, in a way, but basically in this case, we have different options. For example, you can have one of the videos that are there for you to use. There are different videos that we have, and I'm going to give you some examples of them. But you can start selecting a video from zero. I mean, you can go to YouTube, select a video, and start working from that video and use it in your class. So it depends what you want. It depends what you decide. But you can do it from zero, or just select a video that is there and use it. Okay, let's continue with the presentation, and we will continue with the questions in a little while. Okay, yeah, okay. Then, okay, so something else about using videos in this case, or how Edpuzzle supports English language learners. In this case, we have, as we know, we have different moments whenever we are teaching. For example, when we talk about pre-production, you can add verbal prompts before the questions, and you can use, in this case, we have a tool that is VoiceOver, or you can use an audio note. For example, whenever you have a video, it's possible to make just like that, VoiceOver, to eliminate the original audio and create a new audio. But also you can leave an audio note so that your students can see this kind of information before they move to the activity. And besides that, something else that you can do is that you can have images in your questions and your answers. And this is really nice because whenever you have little kids, for example, or young students, they are very visual. They need to see something visual and not a lot of text, no? So maybe, for example, you can ask vocabulary and tell them, which one is an elephant? And then in the answers, you can show different pictures and not just a text. So that's really nice to have images also that you can use. When we talk about early production, for example, we can have these open responses questions that we have where you can select, for example, whenever you create a question, you can select as many answers as you want, and you can select only one as the correct one, or select them all as correct answers, no? So that's also a great option so that you can you can work with this, no? And besides that, we have for early production, we have an option that is feedback. That we talk about giving feedback is very important with the students. So whenever our students have or are working with a topic, we can start introducing some feedback about the response that we receive. In the moment, we can tell them, or we can work with our students to give specific comments, even guide them to a different activity, for example, so that our students can make the learning process a little better, no? Okay, 1 second. And okay, also, for example, when we talk about speech emergence, we have the possibility that whenever students are answering, they can give audio responses. It's really important that whenever they are working, they have the opportunity not just to select, for example, a text box and answer just with something that is there. We have to give our students the opportunity to produce language, and whenever we produce language and whenever they have a recording of the language, we have the opportunity, for example, to listen to them, to listen to the responses, and to make a little better feedback according to what they are giving, to the response that they are giving, no? And obviously, for example, whenever we talk about fluency, we have to give them the opportunity to answer maybe with text. It depends on whatever we need. If we need them to practice their writing with, in this case, the writing as that, we can tell them to type the responses so that they can really produce this kind of language, so that we can see, for example, the punctuation, so that we can see spelling and different things, no? But also we have the option of giving them the option of audio responses, where they can produce this language, as we mentioned before, so that they can share this information, and we can see what they are, how they are producing the language that we are teaching. And for example, these kind of videos are really nice to have. Something that, well, is part of Edpuzzle Originals, but something that you can really do with the video is, for example, help you to present grammar. There are different kinds of videos that you can use, but the grammar videos are really nice because you can work on having cues on the video that are going to help you, or are going to help students identify, for example, in this case, parts of speech. Normally with grammar, it's difficult to just give a presentation and make them understand, no? So whenever you have this presentation, as you can see it here, with these prompts, and besides that, they can see, for example, with these reinforcement of images and the combination of images, words and stuff, that's going to make it like a little more interesting for them, and maybe even better to understand. And we can use basically videos for any kind of practice. For example, another kind of practice that we have is we can use these videos, for example, whenever you are preparing your students for a class, for an exam, a video that we can have here, or what you are watching, is preparation for a test. And for example, in this case, we have an interview with different students, and you can show your students how these students are answering the questions that are asked by the interviewer, no? By doing this, your students can be better prepared because they can see, for example, what kind of responses they can give. And even, for example, they can be prepared with the recommendations that the video is giving. So you can leave notes, for example, and saying, well, you will see it in the video here. For example, we saw an answer, and for example, a note that we give here is that the question for the student was about where he was from, and he was not giving just the answer about, for example, I'm from Peru. No, he was giving Peru, and he was saying more information about maybe the city, maybe the place where he lives, and what he has around. So we help our students in this preparation for exams, and we give them the opportunity not just to tell them, okay, like these are the normal questions that you're going to be asked, but also we guide them into better response that they can give whenever they are getting ready for these kind of exams. Obviously, you know that whenever you take an exam like this, we are very nervous about the exam. We don't really know what to say sometimes. We forget vocabulary. I don't know, anything can happen to us. So if students are better prepared, if students receive these kind of tips whenever they are watching a video, obviously that's going to help them to have better results whenever they are preparing an exam, no, for preparing for an exam. Also, for example, as I told you, you can give the opportunity whenever you use a video to show them this cultural thing about countries where they speak English, for example. No, in this case, you are watching here in the presentation a little video about London, no, about London transport, and you give students the opportunity to see like real context about the situations that we only see sometimes in the books with pictures. No, they can see like how everything works. They can understand how that culture works. And I mean, sometimes we would really like to take our students to that place so that they can see it, no, face to face, but sometimes it's not possible. So these kind of activities where you have a culture lesson and you present this lesson through the video is going to give you the opportunity to take them basically anywhere in the world, so they can see this kind of content and they can work with this, and they can get to know places and the culture, because basically also whenever they learn a language, they have to learn the culture, and they will have a better understanding of the language whenever they learn this way, no, not just learning grammar, not just learning pronunciation, but they have to learn the whole thing, the whole package, basically, in a way. So that's why it's really nice to have this also this kind of situations or presentations with video. And finally, the last example that I have is when you are presenting grammar. When you are presenting grammar, whenever you are preparing your students for a grammar topic, obviously when you make it more visual, it's going to be better for them. As I told you, sometimes it's not is some topics, especially for example the topic of collocations, whenever you're presenting this class, it's hard for them to really follow the topic just by writing the words on the board or something like that. But if you have a video and you show them with different visual things in the video how to use collocations, obviously it's going to be better for them and easier to use this kind of topic. And besides that, if after you make this kind of grammar presentation, you present another video where, for example, you can show them how people are using this vocabulary in real life situations, obviously the topic is going to be covered and everything is going to be in a good way, no? So we are basically closing the presentation. Well, thank you, SBS, for the invitation to this session. And obviously, well, I will see you in another sessions, but thank you for your time. And I don't know if there are more questions about the presentation. Okay, I see a question that says, what do you recommend, using more graded videos or authentic material? Like, oh, well, that's the question that we already talked about. Talking about using this kind of materials, it depends on what you prefer or what you want. But definitely, I will say that if it is a presentation, if it is a process that you want your students to follow, it's better to create your own video, to give them the steps, to basically have your students look at you in the presentation, in the video, following like everything that you are making. No, if you want them to listen to different accents, to listen to different people from different parts of the world, it's better to use a video. Okay, another question from Roberto says, how could we aid students who are a bit self-critical with their own listening skills? Well, basically in this case, as I told you, listening is not an easy skill to learn. It implies a lot of practice. But whenever you have your students and you give them, for example, these videos and you can add the subtitles, that's going to help them a lot so that they can have this kind of practice. And maybe after they watch the video with subtitles, they can, what they can do is, for example, watch the first time without subtitles, and a second time with subtitles, and maybe we can ask them questions about the conversation that they listen, and we can show them how everything changed from the first time to the second time. And maybe we can identify important parts of vocabulary that they can look for and answer more information about this.
Thank you, Gabriel. Thank you very much. I think all the teachers have interacted a lot. They are very excited about the use of video because I think we all agree that video is so important in the class. And well, you have just confirmed that. And I see that they are eager to use every tool available for it. So we thank you very much for your presentation, Gabriel.
Thank you for your time.
So we have reached the end of our TDC 2022. We want to thank all of the speakers, the consultants, and the publishers who have participated, but especially to you, the teachers, the international community of English teachers who have been connected these last 2 days with the sole objective of expanding your knowledge and to developing your educational work despite the circumstances of the last 2 years. Well, I think it's only necessary to thank Team SBS too. Thank you to Farela, to Elizabeth, to Samantha. They have been backstage helping all the speakers when there have been some technical difficulties. So thank you, girls. And again, and finally, we remind you that for the certificates of attendance, you must be registered. So this is the last opportunity to register. To get the certificates, you must have attended 70% of the conferences, that is 5 conferences. If you have registered, or if you're just registering now, you will receive an email after the conference ends. And in that email, you will see a link where you can complete your information for the certificate. If you haven't registered, only if you haven't yet, do it now. That will be all from our part. Thank you for being so active. Thank you for joining us. Have a very nice Saturday afternoon and a great weekend. We hope you connect next week for the TDC Trujillo on October 8th. And you will find more details about this event and the coming events on our social media platforms. Thank you and goodbye.